Okay, so today I'm going to be giving a presentation on my research paper for the class. It is on the Common Core standards and the different arguments for and against. So I'm going to start off with a definition of Common Core. Essentially what Common Core is, and I'm going to read what I have written here. It says, according to the Common Core website, it was a state-led effort put in place by state commissioners and governors involved in the National Governors Association Center for Best Practices, or the NGA Center, and also the Council of Chief State School Officers. The standards are designed to help students with career and college readiness based on, and this is a quote, the best state standards in existence, the experience of teachers, content experts, states, and leading thinkers, and feedback from the public. That quote was from the Common Core's website. So now I'm going to go over some of the good things about Common Core. Common Core does seek to raise the low education standards that have been caused by No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top. Both of those have brought in standardized testing that are linked to state and federal school funds. And so what schools have been doing is they've been lowering their standards since those standards were left in the districts and the state's hands. Those standards have been lowered so that they can keep receiving the funds. So what Common Core is trying to do is create uniformity across the country so that all these standards are going to be the same, and it's a better way for them to apply than for state and federal funds. The bad thing about Common Core is that it tries to fix an already standardized system by using more standardization. As I said before, No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top is already focused a lot on standardized testing. So there's a lot of debate on whether or not creating more standardized tests based on the Common Core standards is really going to be a good thing or not. Education as a whole, and most educators will agree that it's not one size fits all. So if you're going to create uniformity across the entire country, how's that going to work when you have rural settings versus urban settings? Schools with higher poverty rates versus those with a lot lower poverty rates, and how are we going to create standards that work for all those schools? And then you have a lot of opposition coming from parents and teachers. And with teachers now, I want to bring in my sister-in-law, Marcy Summers, and she'll tell you a little bit about herself, and then I'm going to ask her some questions about Common Core.
Hello. Hi there. My name is Marcy Summers, and I'm a speech-language pathologist, and I had been working in Decatur Public Schools for about a year and a half, and I was there right as our principal started bringing in Common Core and having us adapt to Common Core. And I'm not necessarily a teacher, I don't have a classroom, but I was definitely held to Common Core state standards because of the individualized education plans that I had for some students. And then also I'll talk some about the testing and the accommodations for that as well.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and get one questions here. So what is your personal opinion of Common Core as an educator and someone who has been expected to use that in your work in the school?
I feel like the thought process behind it was good. I think our schools do need to be held to standards. I feel like our education system is lacking in a lot of areas. And I think the idea of having a set way to keep track of students is a good idea. However, I feel like Common Core is not necessarily the answer because it's not a one-size-fits-all. Education isn't one-size-fits-all. And I've worked in the perspective of working with students with special needs, and it's incredibly difficult to have a student who has an IEP and who has a learning disability who has to be held to the Common Core state standards as well.
Absolutely.
I think the idea behind it is definitely good, but the way it's being fleshed out in the schools is not working for everybody.
Okay. Next, I just want to know how Common Core is implemented in your school, because as a lot of educators and people that have worked for USC 308 that I've talked with have said, it is really up to the districts and up to the states how they choose to implement Common Core, which is what a lot of supporters will point out.
Right. In our school, what we did every month, we would have a faculty meeting. And at the beginning of the year, my principal really hammered out the idea of Common Core and how to implement that in each classroom. And what we did in our faculty meetings, we would basically just talk about, we would break up into groups and go over the standards for different age groups and different grade levels. And since I worked with K through 6 students, I was kind of able to see the standards from a kindergarten through a 6th grade level. And what we would do is we would kind of do some case studies on how to implement them, how to build lesson plans around them. And then in each of our classrooms, we were told that we had to have up on a wall somewhere different I can statements. So we would have, today we are segmenting or blending CVC words so we can, and then we would have to state the Common Core state standard. And then we'll know we've got it when we can sound out 5 sight words. So basically every classroom had to have a today we are, so we can, which was then have the state standard, and then we'll know we've got it when we can meet the standard basically. And it had to be visual for all the students to see.
Okay.
Yep.
And how did they respond to that? Were you there during the transition period?
I was there as we kind of started bringing those things in.
So what was the comparison then between before the Common Core standards really started taking hold as opposed to after they were implemented?
I feel like in our school it was pretty difficult. I was in a very low income school, so we had a lot of kids who were not at grade level starting the school year.
And those are going to be the schools, sorry to interrupt, but those are going to be the schools that are probably going to struggle with the standards the most.
Yes.
Because if you implement newer, harsher standards on upper level schools, are not going to have much problem.
And
so that's the issue.
This is what some of the 5th and 6th grade teachers were saying as they're looking at the math standards for 6th grade. They're saying, oh, that's great that they can work with integers and this and that, but my kids don't even know the number line yet due to the fact that it was a lower income school. These kids don't have support at home. So some of our 5th grade teachers were having to go back to the 2nd grade math standards just to make sure their kids were able to meet the 5th grade standards, which was hard because you are held, your kids are being tested at the 5th grade level. You're held to the 5th grade curriculum, and they're back at 2nd grade. So it's difficult for low-income schools, I feel like, and students with special needs as well. I mean, there are accommodations that you can have for the testing, but at the same time, if you want a one-size-fits-all, here's the Common Core state standards, then every single child needs to be held to that, and it is difficult.
Okay. Well, that actually just about does it for us. I hope this was helpful in kind of shedding some light on what Common Core says it is, and then how it's implemented, at least in this setting.